Well, it's really great having you here in our podcast today, Jimena. First of all, just to introduce ourselves, on our side, it's going to be much briefer than your side. This is Miguel, GP here at K Fund, and I'm here also with our colleague Gustavo from Brazil, and he's the head of Latam for K Fund. And I would love, Jimena, first of all, to start with the conversation to hear a bit more about your story, right? You have done it almost all in this tech world, right? From being in the corporate beginning, then a founder, then in big tech, in Facebook, and finally coming into the venture capital world. So please tell us a bit more about how you started and how you became a VC.
Of course. And first of all, thank you, Miguel and Gustavo. Since I met Gustavo, we became friends, and this was something we had on top of mind, but we hadn't been able to finally do it, and I'm excited to do so. Thank you for that marvelous introduction. Nevertheless, I'm a bit humble. There's still a lot to do yet. I hope, hopefully in my career, but I guess I've had like a lot of history in the tech scene in Latin America. I studied engineering, and very early I started working in tech. I worked at Hewlett Packard in Mexico. Afterwards, that's when I actually met Federico, my co-managing partner and founder of ALLVP. And he was the one who really pushed me to become an entrepreneur. I've always been a city lover. One of my hobbies is urbanism, architecture, etc. And he was the one who pushed me into launching Carrot with my co-founder Diego Solorzano. And to be honest, we were very young, very naive, uh, and we had the dream to actually solve the mobility problems for cities like Mexico City, like Sao Paulo, like Buenos Aires. That mobility is a big problem, specifically for Latam and, for example, the Southeast Asia, etc. So we wanted to solve that, and that was our dream, and that's how we launched Carrot Car Sharing, which, funny enough, was ALLVP's first ticket. So actually, Federico set the first ticket, the pre-seed ticket,
So
before they had actually.
he pushed you to leave, but then he
Uh,
put money where his mouth was. And he invested, right? That's a good thing.
he gave us the first check while ALLVP wasn't constituted yet. So it was we actually
High
launched.
conviction.
Yeah, we launched both Carrot and ALLVP at the same time, actually in the same very office that I'm sitting right now.
Okay.
Um, Afterwards, Diego and I, and you know the entrepreneur journey, it's a roller coaster ride. There were 6 years of amazing experience. ALLVP kept investing on us up until, I think, if I remember correctly, our Series B. But you know, this roller coaster ride, and mobility has switched a lot since then. Thankfully, we have so many other services. For example, Avancar in Spain, and Cabify, and Uber, and etc. That all car sharings we really did struggle. At the end, the outcome of Carrot was not the one that we expected because we didn't solve the mobility problems of Latin America, and we ended up selling it for $1. But the experience was truly worth it. And that was when I was, I guess, I and to be able to open my heart in this podcast, I was
Please.
burnt out physically, emotionally, economically, and as many as the entrepreneurs listening to this podcast have have sometimes been, and
It is
that's when
not
I.
talked enough,
Mhm.
Jimena. It is not talked enough about. We talk about the roller coaster like a thing, like the funny thing, but of course, in the downhills, you suffer mentally, you suffer physically, and it can also break you, right? I'm always very cautious when pushing people to be entrepreneurs because I understand how hard it can be and how it can be devastating in a way, right? So it's a great learning experience, but also tremendously challenging.
Exactly. And for those that are actually going through that phase right now, and maybe their startups are not blooming today and they're taking hard decisions, etc., my message to them is that there is life after that, and your experience has made you super powerful now. Even though if you don't believe it right now, this experience
Agreed.
will make you stronger and more fitable for a success in the future. So this too shall pass.
And if we if we are sending messages to these entrepreneurs struggling, I would say that looking for help works, right? I mean, there are many people out there that can help, and having a shoulder to cry on in many cases helps a lot. So finding other fellow entrepreneurs and creating some bonds helps a lot.
Exactly. Exactly. You're not alone.
Exactly, you're not alone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then,
You,
I mean, I would say
you,
even the investment was not a good investment. You kept on having a great relationship with Fede, right? Over the
yes,
years. So that shows the true nature of an
exactly.
investor. Yeah.
That's when I joined Facebook. There was an amazing opportunity to lead product for Spanish speaking Latam, and I was like, um, my I was part of the I-89 team that sits down in Menlo Park, and they have product growth managers for each of the regions, and I was leading the Spanish speaking Latam, which was amazing because it taught me to really understand the digital ecosystem of the region. It's weird, but we do not behave the same digitally in Mexico than
Hmm.
in Argentina. There are a lot of nuances between
Good point.
each country, and that one, like Federico, his role as an investor changed as a friend, and we started like maybe having lunch a couple of times quarterly. I will always say that he became my mentor. He doesn't like that because he says that sometimes I was mentoring him. I don't know how. He would always come up like, "Hey, I'm looking at this deal. What do you think about this? Like in the product side, etc." So we switch our relationships from investor for maybe friends. Uh, I will tell honestly, he was my mentor because I will always come for him to coach me. And I spent 4 years in Facebook in what I call my entrepreneur rehab, um, rebuilding myself.
Recovery.
It was it's such an amazing company to work for. I mean, there are so many talented people in Facebook, and just to see how 3 billion people company operates, technology company operates, it's just amazing. And for me, it was like going to university too, like to understand how you take decisions, how data becomes like actually the true decision maker.
And how
So
was
it
the
was an amazing
transition?
experience.
Jimena, how was the transition? Very curious for that because you were in big tech in HP before. Tech changed a lot.
Yeah.
Jimena changed quite a lot. I mean, you were an entrepreneur in the middle of that, and then you came back to big tech. Now to a bigger tech.
Yes, I think it was. There are parts that were difficult. For example, while I was in Carrot, I mean, all the decisions we took were taken like overnight and executed the next day and measured within a week and optimized the next couple of days. Unfortunately, big companies like Facebook that has this huge responsibility and and now they have to be even more careful about the decisions they make. Of course, this cannot happen that fast, and it has to be like super regulated, and it has to go through so many approvals. And I do understand it because we've seen it and it has happened, right? Like Facebook has changed mindsets unwillingly or willingly, we don't know yet, but so they have to build in a more responsible way because the impact that they can have, it can be damaging or or maybe positive, or it's a huge deep impact that can have in the world. So they have to build with these restrictions. So at the beginning, this slows you down, of course, but you have it's part of understanding how scale companies execute, and I think
Mm.
this whole approach now um, it helped me understand how I could advise now the companies in our portfolio that are actually getting more traction and are getting scale and are launching in different countries like even Spain. So it helped me understand how to be careful and what to have in consideration and what founders need to be thoughtful about. For example, Jana, that is a mental health app that helps Spanish speakers throughout the world uh,
Mhm.
uh, uh, to overcome like all their emotional journey. It's not the same that they launched in Mexico and then they launched in Spain, and to understand the different regulations between countries, the different impacts, the different security concerns they have. And this is something that I learned in Facebook. Meanwhile, I just thought that it was just slowing me down because I had like all this build build fast and fail fast culture, but at the end, operating big scales will make our companies more successful, right?
Then, I mean, at that point, you see that you want to have more the hands of the wheel and less overhead from the corporation, and you decide to become a venture capitalist. I was trying to see what was your motivation for that, right? And what I was mentioning to you, I just did also the jump 2 years ago, and my motivation was tied on purpose, trying to help the Spanish economy because you would create more jobs around and also create more wealth, right? I do believe there is a driver for wealth, but also the opportunity on the ecosystem, right? So the ecosystem was booming, and I wanted to be a part of that. And then, of course, I clearly underestimated the job, right? I thought it was the best part-time job ever, but then I had to fundraise, and it was pretty hard. So, what was your motivation to become a venture capitalist?
Definitely, I can relate to your story, Miguel. So after 4 years at Facebook, it truly I wanted to come back to the ecosystem, to the entrepreneur ecosystem, because I wanted to have also a wider impact
Mm.
and purpose, as you mentioned. And I remember going through ALLVP's portfolio because I had always stayed close to the firm,
Mhm.
and seeing companies, for example, Fintual, which is a platform that helps Mexican families to create savings for the future, which is something that the average Mexican doesn't do. And because there are so many barriers to actually creating that wealth and investing in those funds, and there are so many fees, etc. And it's just like maybe education. And I remember seeing Fintual and thinking like, yeah, these are companies that will change Mexican families' future and lives because they will get into their elder years with some savings instead of being supported by their young family members. So I remember thinking about that impact. So I had lunch with Federico as I usually did. And whenever I had lunch with him, he would always be like, "Oh, Jimena, when are you coming back? When are you gonna launch something, etc." So I had lunch with him, and I was like, "Fede, I must tell you something. It's time now. Like I'm bored now."
I
And
am
he was like,
recovered.
"Okay,
I'm bored and I'm healthy. So
exactly." Exactly. So he was like, "Okay, uh, what you need to do is come into the office again on Monday, and if you want to become an entrepreneur, do it on my side. And if you want to become a VC, because I was thinking about the idea, there were so many VCs launching in Mexico, etc. Was if you want to be a VC, do it by my side too. So just coming to the office." And I came back to ALLVP, and I mean, it was coming back home. And so it was amazing. And of course, the 10-year relationship that Federico and I have, and in so many positions, I mean, it's just I don't think there are any other two co-managing partners that do have that special relationship.
Let
So
me, since we are opening our hearts as you start,
mhm.
and you started, so it's your fault. So, so
Please
I
do
mean,
share, Miguel.
I also had. It's funny because you had Fede as your first investor. You were its first founder, and on my side, one of my first investors at Carto was Iñaki Arrola, who is one of the founders of KFund, right? So, and then the same thing happened over 10 years time, and then we we are now in the same firm. So my question for you is, of course, relationships evolve over time, and yours is very special, and I completely get that. But I mean, you were in different sides of the table. Now you're on the same side of the table, and what changes, right? What changes in the relationship when you are at that side, and now you are sharing, and you are co-managing LVP?
Yes, it does change a lot. And for all the entrepreneurs out there, you are the ones that actually make the magic of this ecosystem. And that is true.
Mhm.
Like, I've been to both sides, and nobody works harder than the entrepreneur in this industry.
That's great.
So that is something I understood, and I guess that's why I have more empathy than most of, of, of the VCs. Um, for me, my the relationship with my investors is that I've always appreciated that, for example, specifically with Federico, Federico was the most optimistic of all of my investors. Um, he was very close. I think it was also because of my age and I was very unexperienced when I launched Carrot. Like, I wouldn't have passed the ALLVP threshold today, definitely. But I guess he took a bet on Diego and I, and we would always count on him as being on our side. He will be very tough, some sort of like tough love. And I guess that we
Mhm.
appreciated that, and there was a lot of this sense of um, of transparency, and we were both aiming for the same goals. We both wanted Carro to become this huge success. We were very ambitious, but at the same time, we were always share the same values, and I think that's the number one key thing that you need to find in your investors. Somebody who believes in your vision, somebody who will not give up before you do, but that will share the same values that you share personally. Otherwise, it's doomed to failure when when the situation becomes tough. There will be there will be misalignments and etc. So that's why I guess how this special relationship with Federico started, and then after Carrot, the the um, the transformation from a relationship to a friendship of respect for each other's path, each other's experience, the value of our advices. Like I always Federico has always made me think that I can become anything. And I have always made believe Federico that he can enjoy everything. So I guess when these two things met, we became super friends, and now as co-partners, I mean that's some of the values that we've brought into this firm. That at the end, this is our lives, right? When we spend 10, 12, 15, 14 hours a day in this business. So we might as well enjoy it and enjoy the tough
Yeah.
times and enjoying the boring times and enjoying the discipline, etc. So
Yeah.
that's
So,
our special juice.
so I'm going to seize this
Totally.
opportunity with both of you and ask, how do you see the former operator current VC role against the always VC role? I mean, how do you see these investments being done by former operators, being taken care of, being co-led against the ones of us who have always been investing and haven't operated a startup in the past?
Mm. To tell you the true Gus, I don't know which one is the good one. No, truly. I think there are biases for those who have, like me, that have been in the other side. There are so many biases, and there are so many other experiences, and there is some intuition that you have grown over the years of investing that I do not have. So I guess a good compliment from both. It's a great mix.
Yeah,
Um,
I have the feeling, piggybacking on what you said before, I think former operators have bigger empathy, right, to founders, and they can share more direct experiences. They can create this intimacy, and that's a great thing for discussions. But you are also, as a former operator, too much of an optimist. So you try to see always the best thing in everybody because you think you need to be a bit crazy to be an operator. So you keep that, and you're always believing everything can be done, and sometimes you need to be a bit more critical and thinking, yeah, maybe not. Wait, right? And then there's this idea that the operator wants to go and jump in and do it. So I always need to reframe myself from trying to be too involved. When I see the more financial VCs, they can be more taken aback and relaxed because they can see that what is the real value, and what they can provide, right? So I think that, to Jimena's point, there are good and bad things. I preferred to have operator VCs when I was an operator because I like this idea of the discussions, the shared passion in a way, but I also understand they can be a bit annoying.
and truth be said is that when I just joined ALLVP, I always thought like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna go into the portfolio companies and I'll be like, hey, open up your pipeline and I'll help you and this and that, and I'll spend days at the
Yeah,
portfolio offices. And the truth is
okay.
that the portfolio doesn't want you there.
Yeah.
I mean, they want your help when they need it, and it's usually when things are not going well. So I completely agree with Miguel. Like sometimes you do need to get into the colder side of and the most strategic broad vision. And I think to develop that intuition is really an expertise of years. And I think for guys that have spent all of his trajectory in the investor side, they do have developed that. So I believe it's just a mix, and the big point is to try to be useful to your companies, right? Most of the time, like I don't believe there's not one that would be best than the other. It's just like maybe the person how it shows up with the founders.
Yeah, thinking about operators becoming VCs, I think there is not thinking so much on the how they connect with entrepreneurs, which we discussed, but sometimes when you join a firm, you have to understand that partnerships have their own rules, right? And there's a lot of informal gravitas and authoritas, a lot. And you come in as an operator and you care about execution and getting things done and breaking stuff and putting things in boxes and everything. And then there's all these unwritten rules with people who are seasoned, experienced, successful. So you need to learn how to orbit in around all these new planets, right? So for me, opening my heart when I joined KFAN, I had to learn that. Of course, I knew Iñaki and all the other partners very well, but I had to then learn how my own gravitas and autoritas had to then be adapted to all the other ones, right? And that's not an easy process. You need to really. It's a different kind of skill that you didn't have as an entrepreneur, I would say.
True, I agree.
Very interesting. And now regarding skills, one question: I was talking to a former big tech executive the other day, and he just turned operator, and he was saying that one of the big things that he experienced in big tech was the talent administration. Because when you were in a Facebook, in an Apple, in a Google of life, you can hire and you can fire very fast because it's very easy for you to get access to great talent, to great people, to pay for them and everything. Um, you of course experienced that while in Facebook. How and you experienced some difficulties in that entrepreneuring in Mexico in 2011, 2012, and something like that. How do you see that has changed nowadays?
Sure, and it's a such a good question because it's true that big techs have more reach, an easier reach to talent, but talent at least in my experience at Facebook, what I understood is that after 4 years, that talent leaves. So usually they join the big tech, they learn and try to optimize everything learning to get into the curve. And on year four, most of them drop and they get out and launch something because they get excited about the speed of how of motion. Um, in the other side, when you're on your company and it's a small company, hiring is super tough. For me at Carrot, it was the toughest thing to do to find the team and to find somebody who would be as obsessive as I was and as Diego was. But once you find it, they stick to it and they stick into the whole journey and they do not leave when things come tough, etc. So I guess you have like both ways, right? Like the one that is made for learning and the one that is made for purpose. And when you get people onboarded by purpose, they stick to it. And difficult, very very difficult to find. But what I've seen, and this is why I'm very optimistic, is that 10 years ago when we launched Carrot, I mean, there was no this real tech entrepreneurial ecosystem yet in Latam. It was building. Perhaps in Brazil it was already established and growing, but for the rest of Latam it was really, really small. And when you try to hire somebody from a company, it was very tough. But today, since entrepreneur entrepreneurs have become like more outspoken and people have seen the valuation, etc. There are a lot of people now that they are willing to go and launch something with you and join your team and be part of these big stories of the future of Latam. So talent is way more available than it was 10 years ago.
Jimena, allow me to be a bit controversial. I believe that talent is a bit too overvalued in our world, right? That I do think that creating the conditions for normal people, I mean, of course, if you have a very mediocre team, you are doomed. But with normal people with a great organizational health, the right culture, the right vision, I think they can perform incredibly, right? And so, what do you think? Are you team talent or team culture, processes, and health?
That is a tough question, but I guess no. I mean, I think culture is the most important thing because it will be the scalable thing. But you do need to make this this talented hirings, key hirings in order to develop that culture. But the good thing is that we now have the success stories in Latin America. So we have the corner shops and we do have the pizzos and we have the kebabs. So those people that were already that have worked in those fast moving cultures, they now they are now able to join other startups or launch other startups and create more of those cultures, and so it becomes like a flywheel, right?
Mhm.
But no, culture is definitely the most important thing, and to set the of course the human value at the center of it.
And you've been seeing these founders more greater preparedness in establishing companies now at ALLVP compared to your founders community back in 2012 in the Carrot days.
Definitely. You learn by your mistakes, right? So I guess all of my co-founders vintage are more experienced and way smarter to launch their startups now than what we were.
Totally. Totally. And thinking about, you just mentioned some well-established scale-ups in the region and the growing sophistication of the ecosystem, right? And so that's a big difference from 10 years ago. Now you have companies with muscle, with funding, with the right teams, they can grow internationally, right? And most of the companies in Latam, either for some B2C plays, they look locally, right? Mexico is big enough in B2C, Brazil is big enough in B2C to just create huge companies, right? But if they look outside, they look into the US, right? That's like the place to go, particularly for B2B. Given the nature of both our fans and our focus, we were strong believers that Latam companies can now try to go also into Europe and do business there, given the Spanish and Portuguese connection, and then from there grow into Europe. What do you think around that connection, and not just the
Yes.
US segue?
I think for example, I think the best example would be Jana again. It, it's already speaking to Spanish speaking Latam, so it's a low hanging fruit to actually launch in Spain, right? And add a 40 million people market as close to that. Nevertheless, we should be humble with going and launching into Europe and Spain. There are so many nuances,
Oh yeah.
even like mobile devices, network conditions, regulations, etc. So it's nothing. It's not like there's a saying in Mexico that they're not enchiladas. It's not. It's not an easy plate to digest. Like you have to go thoughtfully. And we think the same way to Brazil. I mean, we've done our first investment in Brazil last year, which is Ruby, which is an amazing company from Rio de Janeiro. But we go to Brazil very humble. We don't even speak the same language. It's another ecosystem. There are different traditions on how to do business. So we would never go either into Spain or either into Brazil, um, trying to think that we are the local partners.
Yeah.
So that's when we need to partner with K Fund and understand that Gustavo is sitting there and he is Brazilian and he gets it and he will be the partner that will actually advise us into how to behave on Brazil.
Yeah.
So
More than
I think that humbleness is the important success rate generator.
It's very
okay,
curious. You
more
were
than
talking about that in Mexico City, how Brazil is somewhat distant from Hispanic Latam, and how Mexico is much more connected in Hispanic Latam, right? It seems much closer to a Mexican to go to Colombia, to go to Chile, to go to Argentina, and so forth, than to a Brazilian to go to Mexico. So these partnerships are paramount not only for the Mexican funds going to Brazil, but also for the Brazilian funds going to Mexico, Colombia, and so forth. Completely agree.
Totally.
And I was going to mention, you're talking about the partnership among VCs, which is relevant, but the companies need access to the market, right? They need distribution channels, they need anchor customers, so that we can somehow use the corporates who are in different countries to be the anchor that can lead you to another country, or the channel that leads you to multiple countries, right? That needs to be used much more by the entrepreneurs, right? Not just the VCs. Definitely.
Exactly. And for example, that would be my recommendation, or maybe like if I launch a company again, I won't, but I would love to have in my cap table the local VC fund that will help me into business
Yeah.
development and to get ignite
Yeah.
the traction of the sales team, etc. And then like the global fund or wherever I'm launching the local partner into each country where I'm going that will help me establish in its relationship and scale in that specific geography.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me change gears completely, Jimena, because I think there is like a theme that appears always lately, which is AI, and and particularly on LVP, you have just launched, right? This AI club and $150 million, is it right? AI fund, right? So you're really betting on AI in Latam, right? And I would love to hear what gets you so excited about AI in Latam.
Of course, glad you mentioned because yeah, Federico and I are convinced that we're living this tech revolution that will change the way we build startups and the way we clients consume services and products, etc. And we've seen it 9 months ago. We've all used GPT, amazing adoption, etc. And what we've seen is that for Latin America specifically, I mean, the fundamentals will not come from this region. And that might be like the role for the big techs, OpenAI, Meta, etc., that will create these fundamentals. But that no matter where you are in the globe, your startup will need to integrate AI in some of these two ways. The first one is by creating a product that will incorporate AI. For example, Sensai, which is our first investment in Fund 4, which actually utilizes generative AI to create experiments for companies, CPGs, banks, etc., in order to get market share. And the other way, the second way, is by making it part of your operations. So for all startups, we'll need to integrate Copilot and any other resources in order to become more efficient. So the checks that ALLVP and K Fund invest into these startups and companies will actually allow them to create more things because they will become way leaner and way more capital efficient in building stuff.
So to understand that, and I think it's a smart move. You're in this conundrum between AI infrastructure, right? The creation of the Lego pieces that are needed for the AI new world, or the applications, whether they are operationally efficiency internally or external AI nudges in the product. You feel that in Latin, VC should be focusing in the second rather than the first.
No, I think it will be in both. Like,
Both?
So we will not create the next OpenAI. I don't think so. But what we will do is that we will use all the different fundamentals being built by other geographies to build better products. The other example, for example, is Jana. Then again, that Jana used to be a decision tree, but now with generative AI, it's able to do a personalized journey. So it's incorporating into their product generative AI. So one is the product-led AI, and the other is efficiency operational AI. That a good example is Shinkansen, which is our latest investment in Santiago de Chile. And when you go to Shinkansen's office, you think you're gonna have like 50 developers working on it, and actually they're just 4 because they can do it with generative AI. That they can code faster and in such a more practical way that the 4 people can do what 50 could do a year ago. So that revolution is just amazing. Like either you use it in your product or in the way you build your product. It's going to revolutionize the way we are building the future companies of Latam and, of course, anywhere in the world.
And thinking about the other open discussion, if incumbents are going to have an advantage because they have distribution, access to proprietary data versus the scale ups or the startups, do you think that corporates in LATAM are going to be quick to implement AI like Adobe is doing, or you think they're going to be slow?
So this is the perfect question because we actually just launched our latest report that is called the State of AI in Latin America, available in our webpage. And we try to understand and map what was going on in Latin America from startups, corporates, and investors. And we have that 75% of startups are already using AI in order to build, ship, whatever, but only 50% of corporates were adopting AI into the way they were using their operations, etc. So startups have this advantage to be able to launch and test and do things faster. Corporates, of course, they do have data, humongous amount of data that can leverage on. So I think a good mix will be for that. I'm very bullish about startups building B2B AI solutions for corporates. I think that will be a good trend to oversee. But for both of them, and both answered in this report, that AI will be one of their top priorities for the future.
Okay. Okay, that opens a way for cooperation, I would say, right? Definitely.
And in addition to
Yeah.
that, what would you say were your two or top three surprises in doing the report, considering the Latam scene for AI?
Yes. So another surprise was that, for example, for startups, they were using AI in order to create content. So basically, it's generative AI. While corporates were using it more into machine learning and data analysis, which makes sense, right? One is more riskier than the other, and the other one is the advantage of the databases that they had. But for startups, one of the biggest barriers into incorporating AI was the lack of talent or profiles in AI experiences. While for corporates was they already may have like these data group teams, about 6 to 8 people onboarded already in the corporate, but they were still they had the talent, but they were moving slower. Yeah, slower.
Understood. Regarding AI, more another controversial question. Do you think there is a correlation between more intelligent AI and its need for human domination, or do you think that we will be safe and AI is not going to kill us all? What do you think?
I I think we need to build responsibly. Uh, that is, of course, something that we've all heard, and we can dramatize on that. What we've done on our grounds is, for example, 2 weeks ago we celebrated Botapalooza, which was our hackathon to test chatbots that were used in generative AI.
Hmm.
Because of course these are chatbots that are speaking with kids, with teenagers, with humans going through other conditions. So we made this hackathon. We reunited around 60 developers in different tables, and they had to go through over all the journeys of these chatbots and trying to break them and get them into the extreme position. And it was amazing to see like how projects and startups are trying to build this responsibly, how to create these agents in order to create the parameters to into which like the results will be human basic, human centric, and will actually enhance the human being instead of damaging it. So I'm just hoping that the big techs are doing the same thing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Fantastic. I have just one last question before switching to our usual last questions. We talked to Fede about about suggested questions to ask you, and the best one that he gave us was that you post a lot of pictures climbing mountains. He asked us that if you could comment your taste for that.
Yes. Wow, this is very personal stuff that, fortunately, I've always been a hiker, and Federico and his elder son has also been getting into this amateur hiking thing, and now it's something that we've done together. And everywhere we travel, we try to find a spot and a summit to get and to reach.
Okay.
So it has become uh, this part of the firm, and we have invited advisors, family, friends, etc. And there are so many similarities into either launching a startup, building your fund, and just professional life, and getting into that summit. That is something we've been able to enjoy.
I
So
see a
I'll,
new
I'll
name.
invite you guys.
Oh, we'll go. I
I'm
see a
all
new
in.
name for the firm. Yeah, you could be all summit partners, maybe, if you rename the firm in the future.
I like that.
So, Jimena, it's been really a pleasure, but we're getting close to the end. I would love to ask you just a few quick questions before we finish. And the first is that I definitely need to read more this year. This is one of my purposes. So, which book would you recommend, and why?
I just recommended this to Fede, that it's a book that is The Creative Habit from Twyla Tharp. Twyla Tharp
Mm-hmm.
is a choreographer, a ballet choreographer. And this was a book that I read like, I don't know, 10 to 15 years ago. And it was amazing because it tells you the structure, how to get into position to actually develop the good ideas. That it's not inspiration, it's pure discipline and work and
Yeah.
methodology. So I truly recommend this. Besides, it speaks about ballet, that it's a completely different thing about what we usually
VCs, I
see.
can see that. VCs and ballet is almost the same thing.
And Fede is truly enjoying it. So I think that will be a good thing to recommend for
So
you
good.
guys and
So
out
good.
of the usual scope.
Wonderful. We will definitely read it. And which kind of quote or phrase
Ah,
you usually use a lot, and why does it resonate for you? Which one?
this is a quote that comes from a book that Federico actually gave me in the tough times of Carlos when we were when I was not having a good time. And it's a book that it's called This is Water. It's a
This is one.
commencement speech, very fast. You can read it in 5 minutes. But this is water is a phrase and a quote that we always repeat because it is the one that gives us that culture that it this is water is not that your life is not the successes. It's not when you sell corner shop to Uber, and it's not like the write off of carro. Your life is everything that happens in between. When you are going to pitch to LPs, and when LPs tell you that they won't invest because the macroeconomics conditions are not on your side today, and getting all those no's and helping your founders in the tough moments, that is your life, not your successes nor your failures. So this is water, guys. So
Wow.
let's learn to enjoy those moments.
So be water.
What an insightful, yeah, what an insightful ending for the podcast. We just have one final question we usually ask everybody in the interview, which is, which person do you think we should interview next? Anyone you would recommend that we should reach out to?
Yes, definitely Andrea from Jana. I spoke a lot of Jana today in this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
um, and she's one of the best founders I've ever met. She is from Cancun, and she was the one who developed this amazing chatbot that helps millions of teenagers cope with their emotions. That is something this world needs today. So I'll recommend Andrea Campos from Jana.
Wow, it's a very good topic, so we'll definitely reach out. Y muchísimas gracias, Jimena. Muy interesante.
A ustedes, a pleasure.